Well, we're gonna miss on the leg.
No, but I've been on the board.
That's a cool picture.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What is that?
It's Catalina Island. Just comes on.
It's very cool.
It's actually really like all, depending on the time of day.
No way.
The sun shines.
Really?
Yeah.
Look at it.
Is it time to start?
Less than a minute. Welcome, everybody. Select Board / Budget Committee meeting for January 14th. I'm Tyler Ward. We have Bill Taylor and Bill Kennedy, fellow Select Board members. Nicole McStay, our Town Administrator, and Danica Malone, our Town Planners, up here at the table. And everybody else who works here is here. And so we are on air, and we're about to start a Budget Committee meeting, and I'll hand it over to Rick Lester to introduce the Budget Committee. But first, we have one item of business.
We do. So we have, we recently completed a water system cybersecurity readiness audit that was administered by the Overwatch Foundation, funded by ARPA funds through DES. The assessment was very positive. Thank you, Nate, and all the staff that worked on that, and Fosh, who isn't here tonight. They put a lot of effort into it. But that work made us eligible for a grant of $13,000 for our planned SCADA upgrades, as well as additional funds for the purchase of 4 iPads and 3 years of AppleCare coverage. So we just need a vote from the select board to accept that grant.
Oh, question?
Oh, I just wondered if it was going to lower my rate.
That's a good
Well, we
one.
won't have to increase it by the
And if you want to sit over there.
Sorry, just,
Yeah, so moved. Did we say that?
Yeah, second. All those in favor? Aye. Excellent. Great work, guys.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Water's good. Rick, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Tonight we have our 2 newest members who are right across from me, Dave Odland and Tony Pascal, and Leslie Lewis, Carl Mazzino, Dick Reynolds, Al Lennos, and Mary Clark. They're also here. We're missing Don Parkhurst, yes. So just a friendly reminder to all our members, if you are going to be absent, please email me before so we know the situation. A couple of other quick things. We have to approve our minutes. We had a meeting, just a budget meeting in early December, and we sent out those minutes. Did anybody have any comments about the minutes from December 12th?
nice job, Mary.
Would somebody like to move to approve those minutes?
So moved.
A second? Second. All in favor?
I-
And I actually have a copy. Where can I give these? Can I give these to somebody?
Sure.
Okay, I'll give those to you later. We also, as part of our charter, we have to explain the tax impact of any increases to the community, and we had some discussion early in December about that, and we're hoping to meet again to discuss that further. This is just the budget committee, and I think we'll just continue to postpone that. We probably want to do that in March, I think, would probably be the best timing, but we still have that on our to-do list, so we'll try to take care of that. And I think that's what I've got, so I guess we can get started. And I think we're to start with police.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're on page 15 for people that want to follow along.
Congratulations on filling those spots. Finally.
Thank you, Leslie.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have minutes from last time that we still have to finalize? from last-
They are finalized, but they weren't included in the packet because we just got them done this morning,
So
so
that'll be
they'll
coming.
be next week's meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. To start with, as most of you may or may not know, the majority of the police department's budget is tied up in salary and benefits. In fact, to be exact, 89.2% of that is salary and benefits. The remaining being the typical operating costs for equipment and that sort of thing, 10.8%. The salary line, what I've typically done in the past is gone through the line items that have taken significant increases. In other words, if I hit a line item that's gone up postage $100 or so, we skipped over that. Is that something you'd like to continue, or do you want to go through each and every line?
No, just the major one, and we can come back if we have a question. So
Very well. The first line item that has taken the largest increase would be the salary line, $163,694. To explain that, part of what's in that number is a new policy that was enacted, town policy that was enacted January 1 of '24. And what that policy is employees can opt to not use their holiday time, in other words, bank it, and then they're paid for that at the end of the fiscal year. That is $75,775 to be exact, which is a lot of money. However, through this policy that's in place, it actually saves the town almost $30,000 by doing that. Because that money was not in the previous year's budget, that's why it's showing such a significant increase. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison on that particular line item. The balance, the $87,919, is for several things: merit, COLA, and for the first time in probably a decade or more, I've been able to fill all of our open positions. One of those open positions is a certified police officer out of Connecticut who's preparing to relocate to Peterborough. So with 7 years of experience and certification. So people like that, I have to start at a higher rate of pay in order to attract them and employ them. Any questions on that line item? Yes.
Yeah, Chief, could you clarify a little bit how it is that we saved 30,000 by this policy change?
I'd be happy to answer that. Previously, holidays were something that were paid, but they were paid as the holiday occurred, as opposed to saving it till the end. You could use it as vacation time anytime throughout the year, but if any unpaid holiday time for police or full-time fire, ambulance employees that aren't allowed to take that holiday off because it lands on their schedule, instead of getting the scheduled holiday pay, the 10 hours in that holiday week, by taking it as a stipend at the end of the year, New Hampshire retirement is not being assessed upon the earnings on that holiday stipend, because stipends are not allowed to be paid as salaries towards your New Hampshire retirement. The New Hampshire retirement contribution rate for police and fire is over 30%.
I don't know why that wasn't done.
is that a policy that was instated, was mandated by the state, or is that a town
No,
policy?
it's our new personnel manual.
And Chief, you said there's a second hire as well?
Yes. For probably a decade or more, I've struggled to fill all of our positions. So a young man, yeah, I can call him a young man, and his wife, comparatively speaking. The young man and his wife who recently purchased a home here on Grove Street, almost across from the police station, has applied. So I'll put him through the police academy. But this, like I said, this is probably the first time in a decade or more that I've finally been able to fill all positions. Filling positions for police departments nationwide, to include right here in New Hampshire, is a real challenge.
So by filling positions, do we reduce the amount of overtime?
In time, we will, yes.
Now, when will those new guys be 100% on board?
They'll both have to attend the police academy. The certified officer will only have to attend certain classes, but they'll still have to go through field training. So it'll probably be towards the end of the year before they're on their own.
Fiscal year or calendar?
Calendar year. December, January, by the time they're on their own. Next academy class does not start until May, and it runs all the way through into September.
So we're starting to pay them immediately, or?
We have to, once they're employed, once we are requiring them to attend training, they are on the payroll at that point in time.
And just one other quick question on, as far as holiday time, we talked about, does vacation time apply the same way where people can bank vacation, or this was strictly for holidays that we're talking about?
Strictly holidays.
The change is strictly for holidays.
Change in policy, correct.
So the 14 are, that show on the schedule of staff, you're fully staffed now,
Will be.
will be with these two hires.
Correct.
And that would be 14 personnel full-time.
12 full-time officers, 14 employees. I have 2 clerk dispatchers that are not sworn officers.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions on that line item?
Do you feel your own passion?
Not yet. In time.
Don't even
In time.
remind him.
Let's see, moving on. Uniforms, like anything else, that increases every year. The cost of uniforms, coats and that sort of thing. Professional services was up $4,000. We began using an online recruiting platform, which is how it reaches out to New England and states beyond. And they do a lot of work at that. That is typically $4,000 for 4 months. And that's how we were able to recruit the gentleman out of Connecticut. So we built that in as a new expense to professional services, anticipating we may or may not have to use it during the next fiscal year. Dues and publications, law books, and various other legal documents. Again, that goes up every year. Vehicle maintenance and repairs, that's up about $10,000. A lot of the work we have done on our vehicles, a town mechanic cannot do. Many of the repairs, as probably your own vehicles, have to go back to the dealers. We do use a local shop here in Peterborough, but there are things that they cannot do, or it must go back to the dealers. They're charging a little over $150 an hour for labor now at the dealership.
But that's still flat from last year's budget, correct? 5,000?
No, that is up by $10,000. Vehicle labor.
Oh, you're all the way down. Because I wanted to stay with administration for a second. I noticed there was like a 500% increase in physical fitness incentives.
Yes,
Could you
I'll
explain
get
that
to
a
that
little?
one. Okay. We have done physical fitness testing per year for those who choose to do it, and they receive a $500 stipend if they successfully pass. Typically, it's anywhere from 3 to 5 officers who choose to do that. What we started doing this year was the educational incentive, where if they have an associate's degree, it'd be a $500 stipend. This is what other departments are doing to help retain people. So the challenge for our personnel is basically twofold. It's finding them and hiring them, but then it's retention. And this is a practice that has become quite common. In fact, the towns of Jaffrey, Hillsborough, Milford, and Keene are currently doing it. And those are the communities that we are competing with. We make no attempts to compete with cities such as Nashua or Manchester. But if we're going to hire people and retain them, we need to compete with those around us that we're in competition with.
So this is an incentive for them to seek or pursue physical fitness, maintain physical fitness?
Maintain physical fitness as well as further their education.
So it's, okay, so it's education and physical fitness. That's strictly
Correct.
paying people to go to the gym.
So this would be the max exposure should every officer pursue this?
Correct, correct.
You said it's quite a small number, however, that actually do.
Yes, that's why we've kept it around 3,000 per year.
Yeah.
Not every officer chooses to do the PT test every year for this purpose.
So there is no requirement for physical fitness by the department?
Not by the department. There is for the state every 3 years if they were hired after January 1 of 2001.
Okay.
This is an annual. Hopefully, to keep them in shape, number one. hopefully reduce sick time, and keep them better prepared for their annual 3-year, which is entirely upon them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, moving on. Vehicle parts and supplies, that is up $5,000. It's like anything else, the cost of tires, vehicle parts that we need to purchase, they go up every year. Equipment, furnishings, and tools, you'll see is up by $10,400. Law enforcement uses a device called a Celebrite, and basically it's a dongle where if we have cell phones and iPads and that sort of thing that we have seized that contain evidence, we need to be able to electronically remove the blueprint of information that's on there, whether it be a text message that was sent. The forensic lab at the state level can take months, if not a year or two, to retrieve that information. What we've been doing for the last year or two, Hillsborough Police Department has been gracious enough to download this data for us. However, that creates a challenge for them because they're overwhelmed with the same types of cases. That officer, the Hillsborough officer, now has to draft a report. They now have to testify in court on one of our cases. So it's becoming overwhelming for them. So we put in there for the price of that. The initial cost is just under $20,000. It's 19 some change. After that, every year, it's $600 to keep a certified operator up to date, and that includes the software maintenance. Okay? But without being able to download the blueprint from an electronic device with information, we cannot prosecute a case. Almost every domestic violence case we handle these days, criminal threatening cases, other cases, involves forms of electronic communication. Yes?
You have to have a warrant, is that right?
We have to have a search warrant to seize a phone, to be able to use a device such as this, to download the information that we need.
And you have safeguards in place so people aren't using it on other kinds of devices, right? Like their own spouses or...
No, this is a
Their
device
hated
that we would
coworker.
keep at the police station. Only 2 people would be certified because the certification costs money every year to use this device. It's not something that's left lying around where anybody can use.
There goes that information I needed for my husband's phone.
Wow.
Yeah, that was dark.
There's a roundabout way
That was a little dark.
Okay. Let's see, moving on. Investigation supplies, it's up by 1,000. That's anything from evidence bag, evidence tape, and various other things, fingerprint lifts. Rental and leases, our copy machine, which we entered into a lease back in 2017, is it's time for replacement. We've had numerous repairs on it. We'll enter into another lease agreement with that. We're at the end of 5 years or so. We can either buy it out for $1 or pay the company, as crazy as it sounds, a little over $100 to take it back. Generally, what we do is buy it for $1. IT wipes the hard drive, and we dispose of it. That's typically how the town has handled that. That's it for the highlights.
I know that we renegotiated with the town of Sharon for services.
Yes.
And that was an increase in revenues of $5,000.
It was, our revenues, our projected revenues for the fiscal year '26 through the school district, for the school resource officer, town of Sharon, McDowell Dam, Moon State Park, and various other forms. Projected revenues are looking at $278,170. That includes parking fines, fines from the court, copies of reports to law offices. Yes, I did.
Those revenues, we see an entry for the school resource officer. Is that
Yes.
the school paying town for
That's the
providing-
school district reimbursing the town of Peterborough for the officer that I have up there as a school resource officer.
No, that's not the full salary. He works for us as well, part-time, right?
Correct,
During the summer.
correct. During the summer months, that officer, we use him to cover shifts. It helps me fill in vacations for other officers. So he's put into the patrol rotation during the summer months, as well as during school vacations and that sort of thing.
It includes all benefits too associated with that officer.
Yes.
Yeah, the portion of the vehicle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, the expense of the vehicle, which is a hand-me-down police cruiser, but there's still a cost to maintain that vehicle, fuel the vehicle.
Any other questions?
Yes, what's the drivers for the overtime?
I'm sorry?
The drivers, why the overtime so much?
Filling open shifts.
Filling open, and the open shifts because you're understaffed?
Because being understaffed, that is correct.
And you have retention problems and recruiting problems?
We have in the past, we hope moving forward with what we have in place, it will not be so problematic.
So let me ask a theoretical question. If you take the $257,000 and you use that to offer a competitive wage, a livable wage to the officers, so in other words, a salary increase to the officers that you do have, which would also improve your recruiting potential, could you be able to do that and still save some money
You mean on the overtime?
by reducing the overtime? Something to think about.
In theory, I
Well-
think it's possible, but not knowing,
Yeah.
not being able to look into the future. And
Oh, of course, of course. That's why I said it's theoretical.
But-
But still to, you know, you had, and possibly you will have problems in the future of retention and recruitment. Part of that would probably swing on, or be based on a competitive wage. And I'm just saying, so I'm just asking, could those two problems be alleviated or reduced by increasing the salary for the officers, having a fuller staff so that you could possibly reduce the overtime, because I'm assuming overtime is time and a half.
It is, yes.
So you would have a straight salary officer working instead of an overtime, but yet the officers would be getting, you'd have a better wage so that it would attract and retain officers. Something to think about?
So, can I speak to that just a little
Yeah.
bit? So in 2003, we did a comprehensive salary survey.
23.
23, sorry, 23, 2023.
He's just
Thank
gonna
you.
say we need to do it again.
In '23, we did a comprehensive salary survey. Lily did an incredible amount of work surveying
sure.
other communities in New Hampshire, who were in, have similar communities to
Right.
ours. So we looked at that. One of the driving factors of that was the recruitment and retention problems that we were having, particularly in the police department, but really was across the entire town. In 2004, through the budget, we implemented some sweeping salary adjustments. And since then, we've seen a dramatic improvement in our retention. Recruitment to certain positions is always difficult. The job, the pool, the labor pool for some positions,
Right.
particularly police officers in this case, is small. And there's a lot of competition for those same officers. A lot of people will come in, try it out for a while, go, start in the police academy. We'll be investing quite a lot of money in them, and they'll decide this isn't the career path for them.
Right.
And so we go back to square one. But when you've got a 6-month cycle of that, it's a big investment into people to find out that it's not necessarily working out. And so when we have officers who are ill, officers who get injured on duty, what have you, or, decide that they're going to start their family, which we had a spat of in the last couple of years, but a lot of paternity leave, we do end up running up the overtime because we still have those shifts that we need to fill. So, it's something that, was a challenge. We did make some big adjustments to our salaries. I mean, just off the bat, it was over a $10,000 increase to our base,
Right.
which is huge. And that really did make a big difference and a big improvement.
In other words, we just did that.
Yeah.
Right.
But-
What you were asking, we just
You
did.
just did it, but when you take a look at the overtime hasn't changed.
Yeah, well, we had like,
The
what,
expense
5
for
guys all
overtime
had
has
kids
not
last
changed.
Well, I would say also that, as Chief mentioned, this is the first time that he's actually filled all of his positions in a long
Yeah.
time. So that overtime is based on history. We won't find out for another year what the overtime will be once he's fully staffed, because the staff won't really come on board for another,
A year from now.
yeah, so
Right.
we're looking at a 2-year period where we don't really know what the overtime will be then in 2 years from now. But next year it'll be the same as it's always been, because the staff still won't be fully filled for this fiscal.
And the overtime is not exclusively filling open shifts.
Well, that I
It's
understand.
officers that are off duty who have to come in and attend court,
Mhm.
that sort of thing, training when they're off duty. And we haven't added staff and this is just to maintain 2 officers on first shift. And quite often, that's not enough. Calls are stacking up, we have to rely on outside towns to come in.
I think it's a good question to save for a year from now, Tony.
Yeah.
Theoretically, I think it's a lot.
Because when I look at 23, 24, it's 300,000. I think it showed that the staff was at 16. And it's just something worth looking into for many reasons. One is the cost of the overtime, but also two, because you have and you may have in the future problems with retention and recruitment, which is something that you don't want to deal with because you have to train people, then you lose them. And so, is there a possible solution in there within this $250,000?
I think it's worth looking at down the road.
Okay, that's all.
Absolutely, sure. Yes?
Chief, do you also rely on recent retirees to sometimes cover those open
Yes, I
shifts?
have 2 officers, I have 3 part-time positions
Yes.
currently to fill. 2 of those officers are officers who were full-time with us, retired, but stayed on as part-time officers.
Okay.
So that's a common practice throughout New
Yeah.
Hampshire.
I'm
In
sure.
other states, some are referred to them as a part-time officer, some are referred to as auxiliaries. But they're part-time.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hey, Chief, we'll let you get home to dinner. Just one more quick question. As far as the police cruiser we're planning on buying this year, is that still in the works?
It is,
$40,000? Has that been ordered? Is that?
No, it has not been ordered. I typically wait, the dealership that we buy those from typically has anywhere from 300 to 400 of them sitting on their lot.
Okay, so it's not an issue.
Right, right. So to purchase one vehicle is not a big deal for them. They're based out of Framingham, Massachusetts. And they actually honor the New Hampshire state bid pricing, which is fortunate for us.
I think we're all set, and thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome, folks.
Thank you.
You're welcome, gentlemen.
The vehicle purchase was approved last year.
Correct. I was just curious if there, I know there, some departments have had issues with deliveries, I was just curious.
I know Chief has picked out a vehicle and
On the
It's not the same
EVs.
situation as ambulance.
well, no.
Thank you, Chief.
Uh-oh.
What,
We're gonna be here a while. Y'all know how this goes.
Goodbye, good
Just go
night.
over the fire station
Hold on, hold on.
project quickly before you
Yes.
start.
Taxable portion of the DPW budget is down, or any questions?
everybody asked about your road.
Yeah, that's how we do.
When's Pine Street gonna be done?
There we go. Are you ready for it?
Tyler just asked if you could give a even briefer update on where the fire department.
Fire department, sure. Yep, we're about 99% the way through design on the fire station presently. We did a page turning activity with the building committee last week where the architect spent the better part of 3 hours taking us through 141 pages of documentation just to make sure that if there's any additional comments or something we missed, or that the building committee and the staff were knowledgeable at a higher level of detail. At this point, it goes back to our construction manager once it's completely finalized at 100% drawings, re-estimated, and we get working towards contract work with the construction manager to hopefully advance our contract right now, which is what's called an AI-131, which is strictly an advisory contract, but allows us the opportunity to extend that work, which hopefully we will do, so long as Harvey Construction can genuinely produce a GMP that says, I can meet your budget and I can produce the fire station that that we said we could produce for this cost. So we're in a small holding pattern. We're still dealing with a couple little odds and ends, some energy considerations from one building committee member, a little bit of minutia on some of the design as it closes in on 100%, but you'll start seeing a lot more press, I suppose, once we get going here. Hopefully, we're still on schedule for an April start. A few things have to accelerate fairly quickly in order for that to happen, but everything is looking fairly good at this point. We're looking like we're on track with our budget and on time with our construction window. I would add to that, right now, although we haven't talked to the board yet, the architect had previously presented doing a comprehensive update to the select board, who we started talking to him actually yesterday about that. Hopefully we can do that once we're through the budget. We would come back to the select board and do probably an abbreviated version of that page turn so that the select board can now see, and hopefully the building committee, if folks are available, can look through those designs and get one more chance before we go a little harder at the project to talk to the architect about the design details. So sometime in March, I don't know that we have a date exactly carved out yet. We'll obviously have to communicate that with the board, but that is the current plan.
Do you anticipate any more public hearings as far as communicating?
I mean, outside of giving the community an understanding of what to expect on Elm Street with numerous projects taking place this coming year, another one that I'll talk about in a moment. Design forms are done, projects about ready to move forward towards the bidding phase. So, but there definitely needs to be some messaging to the community about what to expect, particularly the PCC and other users of that area. So there will be some more, but we'll be working on that in the coming weeks.
I ran into John Lawler, and I understand he's coming out of retirement to manage the project.
So I've been told.
He seems convinced.
For those who are not familiar with John, John was the construction manager. He's a local, and he managed the library project. So there's great interest on his part and a regional connection to helping us with the fire station. But again, we have to work through some contract. Hopefully everything looks agreeable there, but we have to work through some contract to advance that.
Will that change your role?
My role will be the same as it is with any capital project at this point. I mean, I have contract oversight, capital management oversight, and owner representation responsibilities, so it'll be a very busy year, but I'm going to talk about how busy our year is going to be in a minute. There'll be a lot of meetings and construction trailers and site meetings. There's always details to go through. I anticipate a higher level of those given the 3 projects running concurrently, and a lot of details, but I will also be asking these gentlemen over here, Tim Rose and Tim Hurley, to be involved with that as well. Similar to what we've done on the Cold Springs project, which is just about done. Nate has been heavily involved through the entire planning process, and he's been in the construction trailer on a bi-weekly basis for the last better part of almost 2 years. So a lot of detail work at that point, but a lot of that is the people you hire, you're making sure that they're doing the work within the money that has been allocated, conforming to the contract, and making sure decisions that need to be dealt with, because you can never catch everything through a design process. Things will inevitably change. We manage, obviously, the change order process, if there are any, which we're going to try, obviously, to minimize, and all sorts of design details, and then messaging to the community, and things just inevitably come up. They do. So we'll be heavily involved still.
Are there any new developments on solar or heating systems or AC power, your basic?
No changes, no developments on the HVAC system. The one that was presented prior is still incorporated. We still hope that we can incorporate some level of solar. The building will accommodate solar, but the budget presently doesn't support purchasing that equipment quite yet. There's a lot of, there was a lot of grant money out there. We're not sure where that's going to fall in the next few weeks, months. We'll see how that goes. But my hope still is, and I've been saying it all along through the process, that if we manage our money well, we manage the project well, and there's monies left over in the project, we'll still have some decisions to make as a community as to what to do with those. ranging from pay down some of the debt on the bond to adding some equipment back into the project. And solar would be a high consideration there to help us mitigate some energy costs. But we'll be prepped for solar regardless. We're running conduit. The necessary equipment outside of panels and nuts and bolts of a solar system are included so that the building can accommodate in the future. But I still hope that we can support it.
Thank you.
Set? Fire station? Like I said, March, there'll be another meeting. I'll put some notifications out on that, and then there'll be a lot more information to the public about what to expect on Elm Street as we get going. So, thanks. Everybody knows me here, but I'll say it for those who might be watching at home. My name is Seth McLean. I work for the DPW department. I work alongside these gentlemen here, and I'll go over to the left, my left, Tim Hurley. He's our code officer. He is, obviously, he's our code enforcement agent, but he's also involved in capital projects with the town where needed. Did an outstanding job helping us plan our new little storage building at the recycling center. That was a lot of his work. And then these two. To his right is Tim Rose. He's our general services superintendent. Tim handles our highway department, buildings and grounds, facilities, jack of all trades. He's also involved in a lot of capital planning. He's really responsible for executing our paving program and many of other programs. So he's responsible for a high level of fiduciary and capital responsibility for the town. He'll be involved in the fire station as sort of a backup role, working in tandem with me. That way we've always got some owner representation. He has a strong background in construction and operations management. He's a valuable asset. The town has an outstanding year. We're going to talk about a little bit more of his work. Darren Smith is our recycling manager. Darren's now with us going on, where's your tenure now, Darren?
3 years.
3 years. He's been in the manager role for some time now, done a great job helping us to stabilize that facility, helped to shepherd through a couple of our smaller projects, helped us to get some new staff and kind of get our operation back to where it was a few years ago before we had some interruptions there. And then Nate Brown is our utility superintendent, also wears an operational hat, also helps out with capital projects, recently won wastewater treatment plant of the year award, which you may have seen in the paper a couple days ago. Recently won second in the state for drinking water quality. That's him and his staff. If you didn't catch the article, there's actually an article in the paper today about that, so I'd recommend you look at that. It was a great opportunity for some of our operators too to get a chance to finally get in the paper, so it was nice to see. But anyway, we have an outstanding staff. I work very closely with these guys. They are heavily responsible for helping with this budget, putting this together, and the responsible management of that budget year over year, which hopefully you see as you comb our numbers and realize we really work hard to stay within or under our budget year over year, and that's a testament to their work. All right, so I have abbreviated the presentation this year. I think everybody is very familiar with a couple of the ongoing programs that have been going for a while, so I took about 10 slides out. We'll try to go a little quicker through all that. And we didn't make a lot of fundamentally huge changes to the budget this year, so we're really holding the budget and looked for ways to trim where we could. And so hopefully that helps us to expedite things a little bit tonight. I'll go over quickly mission and main department objectives. I think that's important for the community to hear. I'm not sure they're always knowledgeable about what it is that we do. We work out in public, but I don't know that people really know what public works departments really do presently sometimes. So I'd like to give that little department objective and mission, if you don't mind. Public Works Division staff and overview. I talk about that in the context of the budget. As Chief said about the police department, the majority of our money, in many cases, I shouldn't say the majority, we obviously have some big capital expenses and service expenses, but most of it is still people, and the people that put shovel to dirt, who clean the water, who push the snow and take care of all those things that help to keep this community vibrant and functioning, and that's these guys' staff. I'll go over the operating budget overview. I tried to put my presentation in sequential order as you go through, page by page. As you know, I don't usually go through the spreadsheet. I try to call out outliers and things that have changed. If you have specific questions, stop at any time. Feel free to ask. I'll put these guys on the spot and they can talk about where those expenses are. They're far more involved in the details and day-to-day expenses than I am. We talk about larger purchases here in the office, but they're really responsible for all the little bits and pieces that have to get dealt with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. We'll do revenue projections. We didn't have a lot of changes there, but there are some recycling updates there. And I do provide every year a little bit of a CIP request overview too, although we've slimmed that down considerably this year given the general climate around where we're at as an organization and a community. We've tried to make some changes there to smooth things out a little bit, but I'll give you a little bit of an update. Like I said, we'll always do our best to answer all your questions. We know there's extra sessions, so if you have questions after the fact, myself or these guys are available to you. I'm sure all of you know how to get a hold of us. I'll take notes, and I'll happily come back to another meeting if anything comes up in the meantime. Some thanks are in order. I gave them. I also want to thank you, the community, for your engagement. This is what makes this place great, in my opinion, and helps us to make sure that we're doing our best work for the community and being held accountable. It's a high responsibility to work in public service. We all feel that, and we try our best to serve this community, and I mean that. Next slide, please. So what do we do? Try to boil it down into a couple sentences. We enhance the safety and livability of the community by providing and managing services and infrastructure in support of reliable and safe transportation, clean water, and a clean, safe, and enjoyable environment. To do that, we deliver 170 million gallons of clean water annually to thousands of residents and users of our system. We treat 140 million gallons of dirty water annually at our wastewater treatment facility. We maintain over 70 miles of public roadway, although you sometimes hear us refer to that as lane miles, so we double that. It's more like 140 because there's two. So. We process over 2,000 tons of waste per year. We recycle a high percentage of the waste that comes in to help mitigate costs, maintain the environment. We maintain and repair all town buildings. We maintain and enhance 37 acres of public parks and rail trails. We support many requests for service from the community on a near daily basis, sometimes our own fault, sometimes that people need help, but we try to have a high level of customer support to make sure that our community values our service and that we're doing our responsibilities justice. We support other town departments as needed. We have a lot of jack-of-all-trade individuals that work in the Public Works Department, from welders to folks with driving backgrounds to you name it. We have quite a cast of characters, and oftentimes that means there's a lot of skill set there that we can use to help keep our costs under control as an organization. If we can keep the work in-house, we do, and we always try our best before we contract that out. That's been pretty successful over the last few years, thanks to the staff we have. Next slide, please. Unless you have the clicker, and I can just take it from you.
Unfortunately, the battery died, so
Oh, it's okay.
I'm your clicker tonight.
A lot of you know we have a very busy year coming up. I think that I'd like to point this out because it helps to provide context on a couple things. One, we've been very responsible as a community over the last 10 plus 20 years, but particularly over the last few years. Many of you have been on the budget committee for a long time. You know the effort that our finance department, Lily, town administrator, and other staff have put into capital reserves, saving money, getting out in front of this, stop the lease purchasing, try to limit bonding where possible, and start thinking about how do we deal with these infrastructure projects that are coming up. Well, we're there. We've capitalized a lot of those accounts. We've sort of reached this point where we need to do a lot of this work. Obviously, one of the big ones towards the top is a bonded project, but many of these projects that we're going to do are through thoughtful TIF planning, thoughtful establishment of expendable trust funds and reserves, like the road program or the bridges, dams, and culverts. That's allowed us to get to the point where we are now through good financial management. That's put us on good footing so that we can get this work done without it constantly being yet another hit to the operating budget year over year, which, as many of you know, because you've been doing this a long time, that's how it used to be. So I'm very proud of that, and I think we're positioned to do a lot of great work for this community. It's going to be the busiest construction year that I think this community has probably ever seen. And I'm really thankful I got these guys to help me out because there's a lot of work to do, but I know we're up to it. So Cold Springs project, like I mentioned, that's our shared water project. It's in Sharon on the border of Jaffrey, owned 50-50 by the towns of Jaffrey and Peterborough. That's nearly done. We're getting into really contract work at this point, how it gets managed. The facility's 95% the way done. Looks outstanding. Contractor's done a good job bringing it in on budget, and hopefully this coming spring we'll get our agreements in place and that will be online. That provides a tremendous amount of redundant water to this community and to Jaffrey, something that we didn't have before, so it secured water access to this community for many, many years to come. Outstanding project, really proud of it. I'll bundle the next three, so we're doing the DPW renovation project, the PCC refurbishing project, and the fire station construction are all going to go out this spring. Elm Street is going to be basically turned upside down. It's going to be very busy over there. There's going to be a lot of action on that site. Those are all going to be happening simultaneously. You probably got some postcards. There's some information about our lead program. That's an EPA mandate. We're about, I don't know, what do you think, Nate? We got a long ways to go on that, but we're chipping away at it. That came down from the federal government, and that's something that we're working through, so that'll continue on this year. mostly
Can
data
get
stack.
started, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah.
I couldn't, I was thinking, do I have a percentage the way we're there, but we're not really there at this point.
We have 183 done out of 1,700.
We got a long way to go.
That's a percentage.
Double
We
digits.
can probably take 500 off of that because we already know what they are, but ish. But anyway, yeah.
So this involves going to every single curb and digging it up and verifying what materials were used, and while they're there, if there's issues, we're replacing them too. So we're making small updates to the system as we go along as well. But this is a multi-year project. The Grove and Elm Street Bridge refurbishments, we're under contract for civil engineering presently. We're working through design considerations there. We're still on track for an early summer Grove Street construction and a later summer Elm Street construction. There'll be a lot more information coming out about that in the coming weeks and months as well, once we sort of solidify construction schedules. South Peterborough TIF project planning. If you're involved with capital planning in the community, you know that we've been talking about these for many years. Established a South Peterborough TIF 5-7 years ago at this point. That's capitalized. We are feeling pretty good about where we're at with the money on those. Those are going to start to go. One of them is queued up for FY26, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but the others need to take the next step in the planning process. As you know, TIF funding there, no general taxation that hasn't already been captured through TIF funding, so not represented in the budget, but I like to point it out as it is reflected in our documentation. Levacki Drive Drainage Project, those involved with capital saw that as well. That one kind of snuck up on us a little bit. We've sort of been band-aiding that together for the last few years, Tim? But that one's really needs an update. So again, thanks to the establishment of the roads, bridges, and culverts, not roads, bridges, culverts, and dams expendable trust, we already have the money to do that work, thanks to the voters of Peterborough and the consideration of our capital committees. So that'll be sometime, probably spring, early summer on that project as well. Not hugely impactful to the community outside of obviously those that live right in that area. That's a culvert replacement similar to what we did in West Peterborough this past year.
Does that impact 101?
Not likely, no. It's set, the culvert's set back off the road a little bit. There'll be some construction activity there, but it should be no traffic issues on 101. Roadway system upgrades, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I did slim that portion of this presentation down, but we've still got some work to do, and I'll give you an update there in a little bit. Pine Street, you've probably seen some, Pine Street residents in the room have probably seen some action up there from some people doing some survey work and getting us ready for biddable documents on that. That's still slated to go out to bid this spring. That'll be a tandem project that Tim will mostly manage with his staff. We're going to use some of our own labor to try to control some of those costs, do the sidewalk work, and work in tandem with whomever is selected for construction on that. Sorry, running out of breath already here. Old Sharon Road, Water Main and Pedestrian Bridge. I'll show you some pictures in a little bit, so I won't belabor that one. We're getting into downtown paving. We've got a level of asset management work that we need to get into to understand what the town's outlay really needs to be for our downtown planning. But as you know, we've been working inward on our paving program, and we're right getting close to the downtown and need to start thinking about, after these two bridges, what it is we want to do as a community. So a lot more information on that in the future as we get some data together and can present that to various committees in the select board about what direction we want to take. We need to do a reevaluation of our road program, understanding, okay, so what are our long-term financial goals and obligations for our road network now that we've invested all this money? What should it look like into the future? And that's something that we need to get into this coming year, sort of reevaluate and make some new assumptions about what that should be going forward to present to the community. We still have 3 years left on our existing program as has been presented, so we're kind of hitting that final corner and say, okay, now that we're 10, almost, well, we're going on, we're 7 years old, we'll be at 10 years at that point. By the time it's time to say what's next, by that point, your roads that you've paved 10 years ago are starting to show signs of aging, and you need to think about, we need to think about as a community what we're going to do. So, on the project list. Stormwater inspections and related app development, I'll kind of gloss over that one. We've got a lot of work to do. That's also asset management. Fosh will probably talk a little bit about that when he gets into his budget in a couple, I don't know if he's next week or a couple weeks out, but we are trying to bolster our asset management system so that we have a better handle on a pretty vast network for stormwater, and give ourselves the tools to be able to manage that more effectively. So it's not just the staff now that has that knowledge, that we're passing that over to whomever's next so that they can take over, and they have a good sort of playbook and understanding of where that network's at. Sludge dewatering, we're going to talk about a little bit in the budget. There is an increase in the sewer for hauling out mostly liquids, and one thing we're starting to look at and have looked at pretty significantly over the last couple of weeks is what can we do for enhancements to the wastewater treatment facility to reduce the amount of liquids that get hauled out by backhaul trailers, which costs us as a community, particularly the ratepayers, a pretty considerable amount of money. So it's something that we're starting to look at from a strategic perspective. We need to be looking at our recycling center disposal fees, which I know is not a popular topic in this community, but it's something that we need to evaluate and make sure that we're making good decisions as a community about what it costs to actually get rid of things, and then to the board and others, how much are we asking people to pay? So we need to sift through that. Those fees have not been touched in 20 years. Obviously, minus the bags.
Maybe 10 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's been a long time though, and obviously, as we know, the cost of everything has pretty much gone up, services and otherwise. It's time to at least evaluate those and make some decisions there. Utilities Department asset management enhancements. Tony and David did a tremendous service to the community this past summer. They, as the board may remember, asked to be sort of formally sworn in as volunteers. And they did a great job helping us sort of get the ball rolling on something I've been talking about for a couple of years. And that's to gain a better understanding of the tremendous amount of assets that, particularly in the utilities department, which is where they were focusing their efforts. You have everything from pumps to motors to pipes to buildings to, a tremendous amount of valuable equipment out in the field, most of which is underground, which quite frankly we have an okay handle on what all that is. As you know, our staff does a really good job of keeping that stuff greased up and working really well and dealing with main breaks as they happen, but this stuff is aging, and we need to get a better handle on what the town's long-term capital outlay should be for the utilities in particular. And so these guys did a great job supporting us on their own time, getting involved on a really detailed level and starting to look at a lot of the different asset components and helping us to make some assumptions. We're looking to move that forward over the coming year and put a lot more effort into that. So again, similar to like I mentioned a moment ago, we're setting up the next people that work for this community with what they need, like a work order system, an asset management system, so that they can do really strategic capital planning and make good decisions about where to put money over time. Obviously, number one goal, make sure our equipment's in good shape and that things are getting replaced at the right time, not waiting until things fall into disrepair, similar to how our road network had 10 years ago. But think road network, but think more on the utilities end. So I wanted to say thank you to these guys and make sure you all know the work they did, because they put a lot of hours into that. I don't know why, but I appreciate it. Some people like the details. We've got a little bit more work to do on Summer Street Well. As you know, we did some work there it's got to be 8-10 years ago now. But there's a big old crack in the middle of our building, things kind of falling apart, so I mentioned that's something we needed to get involved with, is doing some level of geotechnical evaluation to understand if we can salvage that thing, and that's something I'm hoping to do this coming spring and summer. And then five-way intersection, we get a lot of complaints about that still, particularly drainage. Not a lot of complaints about the traffic pattern. I think Peterborough residents sort of, for those who don't know where I'm talking about, I'm sure everyone here does, the intersection of Union Street, Elm Street, High Street, Vale, that strange area that we all sort of know how to navigate, but that folks from out of town maybe can't quite figure out sometimes. There's a lot of drainage problems in there which have contributed to the deterioration of the Elm Street Bridge, which we're going to be working on this year. So one thing we're going to be advancing relatively soon is a stormwater drainage evaluation in that area, which I think lends itself well. It's a good first step to lend itself well to whether we as a community want to make any changes to that intersection. I really think the stormwater consideration should drive that conversation in the future, so that's another project. There are more, but we can move on. Thanks for letting the soapbox there for a minute.
So if I have a question, there's a mixture of evaluations and things that you're going to be looking at. And is there a dollar figure associated with any of these? And I know sometimes, what does evaluation cost? The numbers are here, I'm sure. But given the projects, it'd be interesting to see a number associated with the projects other than TIF numbers.
Sure. They range, and I will cover some of the bigger ones as we go on in the project, particularly the capital. I mean, if you want to go back, Nicole, I can rattle a couple off.
Well, it's okay, just would be...
This is staff time. This is almost primarily staff time, and we received a grant for the lead inventory. What was that total again, 40 or 50? 50,000 on that, which we got some NHDES support on. Obviously, we all know the value of the construction of the fire station at this point. around the 12 mark on that
This
one.
this year's
Yep.
expense from your department.
I mean, I could do that for you. A lot of this is staff time that you're funding
Yep.
through our salaries. I mean, it's really.
It's here, I understand that.
Yeah, yeah. But nothing on this list that hasn't already been funded or isn't staff time that you're funding through salary at this
Our
point.
question relates to, do taxpayers want to know, well, how much did you spend on this, or how much did you spend on that? I don't know, I haven't been asked exactly, but I anticipate, having seen a list like this is what I like, it would be interesting to say, okay, this is going to cost us X, even though we know what that is somewhere in here.
Sure. It's possible to do that, yeah.
Has anyone actually ever asked that question?
I mean, every
Just
contract
like-
goes to the select board.
No, I don't mean you, I mean, it's an exercise I don't want you to have to do.
I
No,
understand.
I know,
It's
that's
really
my
something
question.
that's just sort of
That's a
an
question to all of
academic
us.
question.
Do we
Yeah,
think-
and then, like I said, the major ones have already been approved, you know, from the capital improvement process. So the smaller ones, I'm not sure, again,
Yeah.
where there's any significant dollars, like you said, besides wages. I had a quick question too, Seth. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
As far as this calendar year, are there any projects there that you do not anticipate, or that you anticipate going beyond this calendar year? Or are you
No,
hopeful
not
that-
presently.
You're hopeful most of those will be completed this
Yeah.
year?
Lead inventory
yeah.
won't be done.
Okay.
The sludge dewatering won't be done.
Right, yeah, thank you. So there's some that we're starting to scratch the surface on that we're getting going in this coming year, but we won't see likely a result. I mean, like sludge dewatering probably involves working with engineering to evaluate what your options are to improve your efficiency as a plant, then coming back to the capital process and saying, hey, if we make these investments, our return on investment would be this. You're probably 3 years out if approved.
Right, I'm
from
thinking more of
even
the
talking.
projects rather than the evaluation.
Sure.
All the projects you're hopeful this year, except for maybe.
Well, the Cold
fire
Springs
station.
project's nearly done. DPW
Right.
refurbishing PCC and fire station. The DPW and the PCC will be done by August. They have to be based on our funding. And the people we're working with know that. The fire station, we're looking at obviously a little bit longer than that. Once we break ground, I think we're still talking 18-month timeframe total, so that's gonna stretch out a little bit longer. Lead inventory, we're probably after that for the next 5 years, if we're being honest, as we have labor available to us in the field. Grove and Elm Street Bridge will both be done by the end of the summer this year. South Peterborough TIF project planning, that will be ongoing. A lot of that's been sort of planned, but we've got to get into a higher level of detail on design work and construction schedules and getting all that worked out. Labaki Drive, that's a pretty small project, probably about $100,000 total outlay on that. That's likely to be maybe a couple weeks, 3-4 weeks tops project. Likely contract out most of that. Roadway systems upgrade, 3 more years on that, but a lot of work goes into figuring out what we're gonna do with that money, how do we balance that money, how do we make sure that we're being responsible with it, or where's the best return, as you know from the presentation, so it's not, we put a lot of thought into that, we spent a lot of time, a lot of that involves getting back out into the road network and reevaluating the roads, and making, so, hard to put a figure on that one, but that's ongoing. Pine Street, yep, that's a heavy construction project, it's not like a typical paving project, that one's, which hesitate, I don't want to give you a number on that one yet. I think that'll take some time, that's a big project, that's bigger than you'd think. Old Sharon Road water main, that's likely to go into '26. I'm not thinking we're getting started on that until late in fiscal '26, just based on this schedule and the amount of work that has to go into that. Downtown paving, I think we'll be working on that once we get through the budget and town meeting, doing some evaluation so we can come back to the community and say, this is $1 million or this is a couple $100,000. That we can't really answer yet until we start really digging into the details of what's below the surface of the asphalt. It's easy enough to put asphalt down, but we don't want to be short-sighted and miss things that should probably get replaced while we're in the ground. I already mentioned reevaluating the road program, stormwater inspections. That'll be ongoing. That's not something we can tackle this coming summer, but we're going to make another push on that to kind of keep going in that direction. Sludge dewatering, I already mentioned. Recycling center disposal fees, that's a few weeks of work. Utilities Department asset management, that'll be ongoing. That's years of work, really, if we're being honest. Summer Street well, that's outside contract work. I put the value at that somewhere from $3,000 to $7,000, but without quoting it out, I don't know exactly. And then the 5-way intersection, I put the value at that about $5,000, and then a lot of public engagement from there.
Thank you.
But we'll see. To the budget.
All right.
Public Works Administration is a collapse, as you remember from the last year. There was a lot of salaries that were spread all over the place, and we consolidated the budget down to a lot easier to read documentation. So this is the code enforcement, myself, business manager. I'm not sure if there's any other salary drawing from that. And there's really no fundamental changes to the administration portion. We've held that budget, but as you've probably already heard, Chief mentioned it, there's a 2% cost of living and a 2% merit currently budgeted across all salaries in the town, which has been pretty traditional for the town, and so that's what you're seeing for increase there. I don't call out any specific numbers, they're fairly straightforward, and it's a very condensed budget. Other than that, I think that the line items sort of speak for themselves as to what we use those funding for, and I'll preface the rest of all this budget talk with where we can get away with not spending it, we try to not spend it. Questions there? Keep moving.
Keep going.
I've already talked about a lot of this, but this is what we do. This is the nuts and bolts of what our small team of administration. Now, a lot of that carries over into these other gentlemen here that work as managers and superintendents, but this is really what that budget is supporting. It's myself, people I work with daily, who lead the department, human resources, all aspects of leadership for the DPW. Communication and education, budgeting, expense, department planning. I don't have to read them all, but this is sort of essentially what that budget funds. All of the softer skill elements and professional elements to the work that we do, particularly related to contracting and working with outside service providers. And then, of course, operations management. And I mentioned code because it's also in there. But a lot of project management and operational management is the bulk of my time, and the people I work with. Next. General Services is Tim's division, Tim Rose. Paving, repairing, plowing, parking lots, roads, winter operations, maintaining stormwater and drainage systems, roadside mowing, brushing, tree work, maintaining and improving sidewalks, curbs, repairing and replacing signs and guardrails, fleet services, supporting other town departments and activities, managing town streetlights, a ton of customer service, and building skate parks. It's a new one. They did a lot of work. Tim did a lot of work on that. Both Tims did a lot of work on that, planning that skate park project, which was kind of cool. And where we can, we always try. His team is really skilled at helping us kind of defray some costs. So they built all the railing and provided a lot of oversight. So as you drive by there next time, you'll see it was not the contractor that did that. He's got welder in the shop, and they made that stuff. So we try to do that where we can. But this barely touches it. They get involved in anything. It's kind of like the old, if you're not sure who to call to help you with a specific issue, they're probably calling Tim at this point. And a lot of people know that because we answer the call. His guys answer the call and they get it done. That we've expanded into a lot more light construction projects. Our staff was responsible for a little curbing project in West Pete. Any light construction, there was a time we didn't know light construction, it was all maintenance, but we brought a lot of that back in-house, and that's a lot of thanks to Tim. Tim's expertise as a construction foreman and the guys he's got working with him. Next slide, please.
Can I just ask
Sure.
a question to
Yeah.
Tim? If you could, you have the overtime and calling time, it looks like it flipped.
It
The
did.
overtime went down by 50%, but the calling time went up substantial?
So a lot of so if we get called in,
Yeah.
Lily has made it a point to use that overtime and calling it calling time. So really, the budget hasn't changed, it's
Okay.
just calling it something different. Instead of, because it all goes to union contracts and everything else, and so what people get. They're allotted so many hours of calling time, no matter what
Mhm.
they actually get called in for.
Oh, okay.
So anything over and above that, we just keep it as calling it calling. So it's the same amount of money, it's
Sure.
just in different
That's- I was
pots.
just curious as to why the flip.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I collapsed a couple slides, so his team, Tim, is also responsible for facilities, parks, and cemeteries. We have 37 acres of town-owned land that need maintenance. Tim's team does that, including cemeteries and all of the facilities. These guys, where we can. We can't do everything. There's specialty work that we contract out from time to time, but a lot of it we keep in-house, and thanks to Tim, honestly. Next slide, please. jumped ahead of me a little bit, Tony, but I do actually call that out. Shifted OT budget to call-in, which actually is an overall reduction of $7,000. And we do all of our forecasting, we work closely. Lily does a great job helping us look at trends over the last few years. Obviously, it's very difficult. So much of our work is weather-related, and we have very little control over call-ins and things that happen, trees falling. But we always still try to trend it, looking at history over time and then adjusting our budget as we can year over year. So we're kind of constantly moving those numbers to reflect the best forecast over the last few years. It's the best we can do with the information we've got, so, yeah.
Seth, regarding overtime, I know you're trying to reduce the use of contractors and rely more on the in-house staff. Do you have a general sense of the percentage reduction in use of contractors over the last
Ooh, that's a good one.
several years?
Boy, I mean, it'll be hard to quantify. It's been a lot, honestly. I mean, there's been a lot of projects that once upon a time would have just gone out on a small bid. And frankly, because maybe, I choose my words, I'm not sure we had the expertise at the time to handle those projects that we do now. And we also had a little bit of a philosophy change over the last few years on what we could and should be handling, particularly when we think about the budget and how we could control costs. But a lot of that, like I said, is driven on the people we have at that given time and the people in leadership who know and are skilled in that area. As to a percentage, I can only anecdotally, honestly, it's not something I've quantified.
But it's actually reducing the cost for the town.
I would say it's reduced the cost for town. It's absolutely held the budget level for general services and in other areas where we can. I mean, we could rattle off projects that, little maintenance projects that we would have called a plumber for, we would have called whomever for, but it's not really a list that I keep. I think it's reflected if we look at a long-term trend in the public works, the taxable portion of the public works budget, and our ability to keep our budget numbers fairly flat, as a lot of other areas have inevitably had to go up due to rising costs. So I haven't done that evaluation to give you a better, more empirical answer than that.
But it's going in the right direction.
I think so.
Lily, could you actually prove it out by saying we have X less contract work on those particular departments than we had 5 years ago? Or, I mean, because we did raise everyone's salary by quite a bit, so it's not, we probably don't see a huge offset because we already did, we raised something while we lowered something else, so. But is there a line there that you can say reduced by 15% or something?
Our accounting system goes back to 2019, and we could certainly pull areas where contract work was being booked to. So what you're seeing in front of you is FY21 is the first column, but we could go back as far as 2019, which is really where those changes are going to be seen more evidently in 19, 20, and 21.
It makes the assumption, though, that your capital work is static year over year. But it's not. We've taken on more work. We're doing. I mean, I think the project list sort of speaks to how much more work that we're doing, and I'm not even listing off all the little catch basin replacements.
I was just trying to
It's a tough one. It's like
support Mary's question, but
Yeah, I get
if
you.
you can't prove it, you can't prove it, and we can just go forward.
It'd be one thing if it was year after year, the exact same stuff broke, but every year it's something different that breaks or needs
Different roads,
getting
different
fixed.
trees,
Different
different
stuff,
bridges.
there's no dollar to dollar.
Cool.
I'll give it some more thought, but that's tough because it's just not been consistent
I'm
year over
actually
year.
personally not hugely interested. I was just trying I was just trying to simplify. No, her question, if it could be
Yes,
answered, it should be
absolutely.
answered, that's all. I was actually not trying to be funny.
I knew that. It was. Excuse me. All right, so I breezed through, stop if you have questions, anything in there in particular, we'd be happy to answer questions. They come up later, please. The personnel expenses, same 2% cost of living, 2% merit. You're funding 11 full-time employees, three part-time employees, and as we previously mentioned, we did shift overtime budget to call-in, which if you do the math year over year, it actually has a reduction of $7,000, which is helping to drive the general services budget being down 2.65%. In addition to a few other things, we didn't have, like I said, a lot of huge fluctuations in the budget. I've called out numbers that are considerably smaller than years past because we have tended to have a little bit bigger fluctuation the last few years. But electricity's down. Lily does our electricity forecasting. If you have questions about that, if it keeps coming up through the next few weeks, please, by all means, ask. But it's going to be consistent across the budgets the way the logic was applied. Sanitation and recycling services, down. Heating fuel, down. Heating fuel's down across the entire budget, which is also helping to drive some reduction in cost. Gasoline up a little bit. Bought a couple of vehicles that are gas-based, so otherwise that would likely be down because our pricing is has stabilized there. Diesel down a considerable amount. We had a long conversations about diesel last couple of years. Pricing is stabilized. Our forecasts are a little stronger. We're fairly confident in this number. Might be a little bit conservative. We've talked about this, Lily and I, at considerable length, and you had previously established and funded a winter operations extendable trust. I'm comfortable with the number. It makes me a little nervous, but we have money in the bank that we could draw on if we were in trouble. We start having a typical New Hampshire winter, which we don't really see anymore, which is obviously our biggest diesel driver for the general services budget, is if we get a lot of snow, we use a lot of fuel. But we're comfortable with that number, which is helping and drive down the budget. Community center heating fuel's up. It's down everywhere else. I can't explain that. It comes through the forecast. I think someone maybe just turned the knob up a little bit.
That was
I
just
think the
falling in
pickleball
on
players are
itself.
using it
Players
more.
wanted it warmer.
What's that?
Pickleball players are using the gym more, the gym's largest.
There you have it. Pickleball.
Seth, do you have staffing vacancies currently?
We do not have staffing vacancies currently.
As
We
of
are
2
fully-
weeks ago.
As of a couple weeks ago, yeah. We've actually been pretty strong there. Our trends have been similar to what Chief Kennard was mentioning. The interest in this level, this kind of work has been a little stronger. It was very difficult, and you probably have heard we talked about it a lot in the last few budget years, but interest has been stronger. Testament to the community investing and helping us to regulate and get our salaries to a more competitive area. We've been able to attract people. We've been able to retain people. We're in really good shape right now on that level. But it's very disruptive to even lose one person because we have dedicated plow routes and you lose one driver this time of year, someone moves on, two, it ends up putting a real strain on the staff. You lose a couple recycling center folks a couple years ago like we did, and it's these guys, staff that should be out laboring and doing the work that they signed up to do, but now they're covering shifts at recycling. So we're in good shape right now. I'm hoping that holds. I think it will. I hope it will.
Just want to knock on wood one more time.
I'm not actually that superstitious.
Especially when it comes to April.
If we're being honest, I think we try to provide the right kind of work environment. This is an amazing community to work for. It's a great organization to work for. People who want to come to work and do something and be part of a team that's doing something for the community, this is a good community to work for. And I think that's why our reputation in public works is high. It's because these guys get the work done, and they look. I think there's an element of people that are attracted to being part of a team that wants to get out there and get something done for the community. So that's what we've been very successful in hiring people with great attitudes that want to support the community.
Seth, where does the road maintenance line come in, the salt and sand? Where am I seeing that?
I have to go back.
It's under general services. road
Yeah, general
maintenance,
services.
24.
Page 24.
Yeah, page 24.
I changed my page numbers to condense this down. But under general services, road maintenance,
Okay,
salt and sand, look at that, budget number 71,221. Down from 81.
Oh, so that's just the difference. I thought that was your cost.
No, I'm only showing you the differences.
That makes a lot more sense.
I wish.
3 bags of sand.
That'd be great. We've been able to hold that number. Prices increase year over year on salt in particular. Sand we put out competitively. Salt, we're kind of a little hands tied on that one. There's not many suppliers. There's one big supplier that supplies most of New England. But that's pouring it on thick here. But Tim's actually done a really good job reducing our salt usage around the community. He's put some different management practices in place, and so the price has gone up, but our usage has reduced. But they're doing a good job of treating roads as far as I can tell. So that's actually more of an operational change than cost. So we've been able to hold that level.
I think if you want to go back to 2019, we have, so Martin Salt keeps a record of all of our ordering and invoices. And I think if we go back to 2019 was when I kind of took over.
I've got those numbers if you.
Oh, do you?
Mhm.
We're down by about 600 ton a season from where we were previously. So it's quite a savings.
Yep. That's just better, honestly, just being frank, better management of what we're purchasing. So,
Down 600 from where? What?
We used to purchase 1,000 ton right off the bat before the season even started, and then usually January, February, we're purchasing another 600. Right now, we are purchasing 600. It's been for the past 3 years, before the season started, when we've never had to buy any more.
Well, that's good.
Is there any reason? I'm sorry, buddy. I was just gonna ask why that number's so specific, 79,421. For
It's
Very specific.
it's because I did it.
No wrapping here.
Yeah, no rounding. I'm using 9 years of data that Tim was able to provide to us. So 3 years ago, Tim pulled out information that went back to, on all these quantities, back to FY16. My system only goes back to 2019. So we were able to put together for all the commodities, the exact number of gallons for every single year, exact number of tonnage, and then we're using a multiplier of what our current pricing is.
Okay, I'm sorry, you had a question?
But do you change the ratio of salt to sand?
The ratio, no.
Mixture, yeah.
So there is salt that get mixed in with the sand, and that ratio has not changed. It's enough salt to keep the sand from freezing and clumping up in the sanders. There's only a select few rows that actually get full salt. A lot of it has to do with managing the salt. The newer vehicles help out a lot. You're able to dial those down. The new sidewalk machine has helped out quite a bit. We're down to almost doing all of the sidewalks with just one load. So, I mean, you don't see that when we have these little spurts where it's just black ice and we go out there and that's when you see the glistening salt on the sidewalks. I mean, it's no more than there usually is on there, but there's just no water to soak up the salt, so you see it a little more. But the usage is down considerably.
Right there.
all right, thanks.
Ground watering, you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of a change to the budget there. Street lighting, I just don't mention this now, so I'm not, you're hearing electricity over and over again in everybody's budget. So similar idea, forecasting based on consumption, our new rate based on our energy contracts, and you're mostly going to see that electricity number drop throughout the budget everywhere operationally. Maybe a couple outliers. Post-closure, we talk about, it's not really general services, but it doesn't really fit neatly. It's kind of its own thing, but we talk about it every year. We, I don't know how many years ago at this point, was it 80s, there was an legal agreement with New Hampshire Ball Bearing, where there's a shared cost for ground monitoring, for landfill monitoring. I mentioned when we were last here, it's actually only a couple thousand. You probably didn't get the updated document, but we put a placeholder of 80,000 in. The actual cost that we're looking at is 72, and that is a split cost with New Hampshire Ball Bearing. I can't explain the financial mechanism beyond that, but it's half of that cost for the town of Peterborough.
It's not half the cost, it's only Geo Insight bills, because that's so anything that is for the other vendor that's used, those are not reimbursable according to the contract.
Right.
Are we picking up the whole shot now because the contract with Ball Bearings is over, or has that changed?
The contract with Ball Bearings is not over yet. That contract will be exhausted in probably 2 fiscal years. But the monies that were in the trustees of the trust funds that were set aside, those were fully expended last year. So we're getting probably about 30,000 of that back from Ball Bearings.
Is there a big project come up with anything interesting as far as how rough that situation is?
Are you talking about the cement that went into the ground?
Is that what they were doing? I know they were working there a couple of months over at Ball Bearing.
I have had no updates from Ball Bearing on that. I don't know if they've come to the board recently. That's not something that I no idea. No information on that one. I'd be curious to know though, but I can try to find out.
Put it on your list.
All right. Can we go back a few slides? Any other questions? General services? Like I said, Tim has delivered, worked closely with Lily, myself, try to deliver a responsible budget, try to control costs. A lot of that's good management on Tim's part. try to present a reasonable budget that I think still allows us the flexibility in bad emergency situations to make sure that we can address road washouts or other things. I didn't talk about road monies yet because I do a separate slide on that, but no real change to the program there, but I'll talk about those in a minute. I guess we're good. Recycling, solid waste, including landfill monitoring and post-closure, it's actually there, but it doesn't really, I put it on the last slide to get it out of the way, I guess. So, maintaining and promoting a healthy environment by safely and efficiently receiving and processing 2,000 tons of waste on an average annually, of which over 70% is recycled. Then managing the groundwater monitoring program, which we just talked about, so we'll skip over that part. We have 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee in the budget. I'm not sure what, same 2% currently built in. Somehow, my mistake or something, neither here nor there, we somehow dropped our part-time Saturday position out of the budget. For the current fiscal year, we will cover that through the budget. Otherwise, we do have that person employed, but you're seeing it accurately reflected back in the budget. It's a necessary position that gives a lot of flexibility, something we've had for many, many years. I haven't had the time to research what exactly happened there, but it was dropped out, but I think we need to add that back in. So that's why it's not a straight 4% if you do the math there on the personnel. Operations, sanitation, and recycling, up $6,000. Maybe you got your notes for me. I've done a lot of talking. You want to do some talking?
Well, the vehicle maintenance, that was to replace the cutter teeth on the whacker for the glass crusher bucket.
Actually, I do need to talk about the operational line. Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, no.
The glass crusher bucket worked really well on the new glass that was dumped, but the old glass, it kept getting piled up. There was rocks and stuff that the crusher bucket couldn't handle. So with the new teeth, they're gonna be made differently. They still won't be able to handle rocks, so we're gonna do some training and figure out a better way to crush the glass.
What's happening to the glass once it's crushed to the appropriate size?
Then we need to get a trommel, and we have to pull out everything that's 1 inch minus, that can be used. And then everything that is bigger than that will re-crush and then send it through again. And then we can use that on the water and wastewater easement roads. I think that'll take probably all of it.
So we can recycle it essentially. We can use it as a road base. Deal with a 20-year stockpile there, which would be nice. There was an error in the budget, which is now updated, but it's actually a $6,000 increase. Originally, it was showing as I think a $10,000 increase. That's because we inadvertently carried a budgeted purchase into the current year, caught that looking through it for the 4th time today and said, oh, we don't need to rebudget the $4,500. So that's why there's an asterisk there. So if I could go back real quick though to this operations, sanitation, and recycling. Get my little graph out here. For those in the room, remember this time last year, we said the pay-as-you-throw program is not working anymore. We need to talk about bag pricing. And the pay-as-you-throw program is not working again. But I'll explain why if I can find my sheet. The problem with the pay-as-you-throw program is that obviously it encourages recycling, but it depends on bag sales in order to function properly. What we've seen is actually, since the pricing on the blue bags went up, people bought less bags. They more efficiently use the bags. They're throwing away less plastic, but they're buying, I don't know, oh, do you have it? I thought I brought it, but I just want to get the numbers right, but I think it was 29% on, we're selling 29% fewer large bags and 22% fewer, oh, I was close, 29% large cases and 23.6% less small cases. That's a great thing for the environment on one level, but not good for the pay-as-you-throw program because it means that you don't have the revenue coming in to support disposal. So kudos to the community for more efficiently using bags, but now we're in a situation again where the pay-as-you-throw program can't fund itself. So we put presently, unless you want to do it another way, $6,000 in the operating budget against sanitation and recycling, which will, after Lily helped us out here doing some math, should be good until we see more price increases down the road again on hauling charges and diesel and all that. But that's what you're seeing in the budget. That's the increase. The increase would it's making the assumption that people really didn't like the pricing increases, and we can support that through taxation and the general budget by adding $6,000 to that line.
But the majority of the program is still self-sustaining.
Thank you.
Are you seeing a corresponding drop in certificate renewal?
No, but that's a little bit of a sticky subject for the stickers part of the fund. We need to do a better job selling those, so we don't actually have good data on that at this time.
Is
Our
that
revenue
something
sort of
that
dropped off
the
there.
recycling advisory committee may be looking at?
I don't think we necessarily need to. I really think what we did the last couple of years is really focus on getting our staff trained back up to get things moving through that facility. I'd say they're in pretty good position now. They're doing a really good job. Things are moving really nicely at that point, and now we need to actually move that enforcement of our stickers up. So that's something we've been talking about internal and something that the team down there is going to do. You see it reflected when we get to the revenues too, that we've said we want our revenues back to where they were a few years ago on the stickers, because we haven't changed any pricing there. So it's hard to say. I assume that we have lost some business. People maybe said, these bags are getting expensive and I'll just hire the local person to come pick it up. I don't have an easy way to tell you. Until we enforce the stickers a little more than we are presently, it's hard to tell if we've lost a lot of clientele. However, with that said, our tonnage hasn't changed at all. Our tonnage is actually like basically right on the money. It's been I think the number's 580 on the 580 tons. I think that's the number. I'm almost positive that's the number. Year over year over year. So we're throwing away the same amount, but we're buying less bags, which means the pay-as-you-throw program just doesn't function the way it should. It really requires the sale of the bags to fund it.
So Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, people are walking with their bags open now.
Oh, yeah.
Full.
They're full to the brim. As much as they can on those
Yeah.
bags, you know.
Did we get much pushback from the price increase?
Well, they just didn't buy any bags.
No, I'm just saying.
Only on Facebook, but
I didn't get any complaints in the office. I hear them through the grapevine and through people who watch social media pages, which I don't do. But no one came in. But it took a little time to get the data together, so when we started looking at this going into budget, it was like, oh boy, here we go again. This thing just, you can see it's a little shaky just the way the financial mechanism works. It really depends on a static amount of sales for blue bags, and if there's any fluctuation there, you're chasing it again, so. We present it through the operating budget under the assumption that people don't want to see any more increases to the blue bag program. That it would take us, it takes us, we've got some other fluctuations in the budget, but we're at 4.73%. I don't know what the full Public Works budget is, but obviously you saw some pretty significant cuts in the general services end. We're on a much larger budget. I would venture a guess that we're still relatively flat or maybe even slightly down if we combine all, I just didn't do the math. But anyway, I thought it's better to present it as an operational expense than another blue bag increase, but ultimately I think it's up to the committee and the board to decide if they want us to go back and do blue bag pricing increases again. Happy to do it. We could drop the money back out of the operating and try, but we saw a behavior change which was unexpected this last time over a couple dollars per case. So it's a very tight program. Any other questions about that? Otherwise, last one. There's another minor reduction in the budget, $1,800. The hazardous waste, that's the program that you can use at the Keene facility. Their numbers have just come in lower this year, so we always carry their numbers into the budget. So $1,800 less was their quote to us, and our commitment to them is to take it to the budget process, and if passed, we have the opportunity to still use the household hazardous waste program at the Keene City Center. Not sure what their official name is, but.
So if we go there, they charge us back? If I say I'm from Peterborough?
They're just collection days.
Is that how it works?
Right.
Yeah.
You just have to-
So what was it?
How does the household hazardous waste program work?
So you go there with, you're allowed up to 10 gallons for free. And then you go there and you just let them know that you're from one of the communities. Usually I put a sheet out everywhere for people to see. And then from there you can just drop your materials off.
Is it any day or?
No,
Is it
it's
specific
usually
days?
like Wednesdays and Fridays.
In a certain season?
Yep, yeah, also, usually it's in spring to summertime and then around like summer and fall to do it.
The town's been participating in that program for well before I came to work here and live here, so I don't know, 20. But in any case, it was nice to see that their cost is, usually their costs, they send us something and they say it's $7,800 and then they end up billing us considerably less money than that anyway, but their quoted cost was considerably less, so that's what we usually carry through the budget. Anyway, it's reduced at this point. Any other questions about recycling? I guess I'll await feedback on blue bag pricing or whether we feel this is an appropriate way to deal with the pay-as-you-throw support that's needed.
Don't we, that's not really a budget committee question. Don't we have a subcommittee for the recycling center? Wouldn't they propose something instead of us talking about it here?
They haven't addressed that issue.
Well, isn't that part of their program? Like, we shouldn't be talking about it tonight here.
No.
Or at a budget meeting. So they should be coming to you guys with a plan.
If they have some advice.
Right?
I personally think that work falls to the staff and not the advisory committee, and that I'm recommending that the budget support it, but I'm happy to evaluate bag pricing again if needed. I think to your comment, Leslie, if an alternative to the pay-as-you-throw, just getting rid of that and doing something else, what else can we do? That's, I think, something that makes sense if we wanted to research with the advisory committee, whether they could help do some research and figure out, okay, what should this look like? Do these programs work anymore? Do we like this? Should we that's.
I do think we should make some kind of a statement about, we're assuming as people in the town that we are successfully running a pay-as-we-throw program that is paying for the program. But that clearly, now we're paying it through taxation as well. But, so I don't think the pay-as-you-throw program is working totally, because now you're asking for additional money. So, yeah, I would say it should be, the whole program should be reevaluated. Maybe the sticker price needs to go up, but as you said, if we're not policing whether people are actually buying or affixing their stickers, which is usually my problem, then we don't know whether we're missing revenue from there, so.
Or if we've lost clientele.
Yeah, so I would say not a question for, certainly not tonight, because we've got, I'm sure, a number of slides to go through, but.
We're getting closer.
But,
Only.
but I think certainly for next year, there should be a statement made about how you want to handle that.
I take my direction from the community, and since it is reflected in what you will pay for taxes, I felt it appropriate to show it here
I think
tonight.
it's an appropriate discussion for us, so talking about revenues. So I don't think it's out of bounds, but I think we should move on right now.
I mentioned it again tonight because I mentioned it last year and asked the budget committee, because that's where we were in the process when we discovered that. I want some advice here. What would you see? And the budget committee at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, said, why don't we look at blue bag pricing, don't put it in the budget. So, but here we are again, we see that the behavioral changes can really impact this program. If the select board, town administrators suggest to us, we want you to look at 10 new options, what else could we do? I will do what I'm instructed to do.
Okay.
So, happy to, but.
All right, no, we can move on.
All right, thanks. Which gets us into utilities, and we're rounding the final corner here, so. Utility division consists of the water and wastewater department. It's responsible for overseeing water and wastewater facilities, as well as all aspects of the water and wastewater distribution and collection systems, and monitoring our wells and sewer systems. All right, budget highlights. This is a big number, but I'll get to that at the very bottom here in a second. FY26 budget highlights. Personnel, we have 6 full-time employees, 1 part-time. They split duties, water and sewer. We split those salaries across water and sewer. Not all employees are treated exactly the same. Some put more time into sewer, water, and our salaries are allocated accordingly. Same 2% cost of living, 2% merit, and an increase in overtime. We were a little too aggressive in our overtime numbers last year, and we're forecasting that number to be a little bit higher, so we've added that back into the budget. So an increase of 2,000 there. Water operations, actually, I've done a lot of talking here tonight. If you want to take it, Nate.
The supplies are up for water, 12,000. That's what we spent on the lead line inventory. I'm assuming that we're going to spend the same amount. It's 1 out of every 5 curbs that we have to replace. The printing is for the mailers that you guys got for the lead line inventory. It's going to be roughly the same amount to send those out again. I don't know about the gas and diesel.
Same logic applied with stabilization of pricing.
The water well repair maintenance, the $6,000. We have doors that are 20, 30 years old that need to be replaced, and louvers that are falling apart. So our plan is to purchase the doors, replace them ourselves, same with the louvers. Electricity, I'm not sure about.
Electricity is up a little bit because the wells are not included in our contracted rate because they're net metered through Eversource, and Eversource's cost went up a little bit.
However, we did
welcome.
relook at the numbers yesterday because it seemed like a little bit too strong of an outlier. Obviously, that makes sense, thanks for the context, but we did reduce that down from the original draft you looked at probably a few days ago, 100, reduced it down to 92,802. Working directly with Lily, we felt comfortable with that number. All right, good.
Heating fuel's down. The hydrants, our supplies money is up 2,000 because we didn't have enough money to even purchase one hydrant, so that will cover one fire hydrant replacement. And then the non-operating, I don't know.
That's Cold Springs.
Okay.
That's Cold Springs debt coming online. We're feeling the effects of that. So the water, that's driving that number, 49.66%. If you subtract out the debt we took on for Cold Springs and interest, we're actually at 6.38%, which I think is important to look at because those are obviously decisions that were made years ago, and that we're now feeling the effects of those financially.
But this whole budget is supported by fees,
Yes.
not operating.
But yeah,
Lily,
this is
can
not
you talk
taxation.
about why that debt principal went from 120 a year to 540? I don't.
Cold Stone Springs project will be done in early summer, and the year that it completes, that project is 54% or 56% grant funded, and then the rest is a loan. The loan is a 10-year note, and it's payable to the DES, and this coming fall, I think it's 6 months after the project is closed, the first loan payment comes due.
What's
We
the
had
rate on
existing
that?
debt before that, so that's adding on to the existing debt. That's what you're seeing in the prior years.
Summer Street well.
Yes.
Yep.
So what does next year look like? Does it look like 540,000 again next year?
Yes.
So that's.
For 10 years, you're going to see a large number.
Okay, I understand.
Until Summer Street well comes off, and we'll drop a bit.
Lily, what's the rate on that loan?
I have no idea. I'd
It's
have to
very,
get that.
it's very low.
Yeah,
I
it's-
don't remember what it is off the top of my head.
It's low, it's through
It's
New
not-
Hampshire.
Yeah,
Gas,
it's like
subsidized.
$29,000 in interest, and the rest of it is principal payments.
Does there's some of these larger residential projects coming online affect usage, water usage? Like, are they all gonna be on water?
So I've done the math, and we have more than enough water, and that was even without Cold Stone Springs.
I was more thinking about my rate going down.
Oh, your rate, I thought you were talking about how much water we have.
No, I was talking about when they go online, because I'm looking at the 6% increase and saying, I want town water.
Don't hold your breath.
Your rate's probably not gonna go down, but yes, bringing on new customers does mitigate the increase a bit.
You can always use less water.
Use less trash bags, use less water.
I was meaning to make that comment too, when we were talking about recycling too. The easiest way to control costs of the recycling center is to reduce the amount of tonnage we're sending out in trucks too. That's the best thing we can do, but that's a really
Less
difficult nut to
bags.
crack. Same with water.
Well, has
I mean,
there
I-
been some discussion as far as usage going forward, how to,
How to
price that out
increase
differently?
usage?
Like, should heavier users be paid more, paying more?
We're talking about the rate analysis for you. We're back on water?
Right.
Yeah, we've done some substantial work on rate analysis, and I'm not sure we're quite at the point where we're ready to bring that forward. That will be in spring, so early summertime. We've got to capture that data, and I tried to preface it. I'm looking at these guys over here. I'm not going to scare you with any numbers, but your water and sewer plant's in good shape, but our water system and our sewer infrastructure collection system is fairly old. It's aging. I'm not going to tell you your rate's going to go down. I think your rate needs to go up, honestly, because we need to start capturing money in the enterprise fund to be taking care of critical water infrastructure. But we'll be working through that, and have some series of public meetings and public hearings about the rate this summer, early summer.
Look forward to that.
I bet.
Okay. Any other questions there? We're in overtime now, so.
I'll do the personnel real quick, so, and then I'll hand it back to you, Nate. Same 2%. We did make a salary adjustment. We hired an individual that we think is someone worth investing in and training up to take on a stronger role at our facility over time. So we adjusted his salary this past year. You're seeing that reflected in the budget now. There are a couple little offsets to that, but I don't want to give a lot more information to that. I don't want to puff anyone up too much, but the fact of the matter is we have an awesome staff. We take good care of our staff where we can, and we need to be thinking about when Nate and I retire, which I probably look younger than I really am, and he's only got 10 years left. So we're starting to think about that now. And I think that's really important. So we've got an awesome team there. 2 years ago, we finally hired a chief operator who's doing an outstanding job, as you know, because we just won some awards on it. And we brought in another individual who we're pretty happy with that person's performance at this point. I'll leave it at that. But that's what that salary adjustment is. And you also see a reduction in standby time pay, which with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Lab supplies are up just because everything's gone up. Sewer building and grounds, that's more doors, more louvers. We get calls from 2 vendors that can't open the doors when they come to make adjustments to stuff. Electricity is down, and maybe Nicole would know why.
On the sewer side, I don't think all of your lift stations are net metered. The wells are, but I believe the lift stations are not. So it's probably reflected in that. Those will be captured in the contract.
Heating fuel, I'm gonna assume that heating fuel is down at the sewer because we have adjusted a lot of the thermostats down. And then gasoline and diesel, that'd be same as what Seth had talked about before, and the sewer treatment plant services, the $10,000.
PFAS testing.
Oh, you're right, yeah, PFAS. Our new permit, we have to test for PFAS in our sludge and in our influent, which is the water coming into the treatment plant and the water going out of the treatment plant, and those are $400 test. It's expensive, so that's in the $10,000 plus hauling out the sludge weekly, that has also gone up, so that's in the $10,000 as well.
What's that PFAS testing shown so far? Are we in good shape? Or?
We haven't had to do it yet.
Oh,
We have to start after January. It's I don't remember exactly. I think it's the second quarter, could be the third quarter. I'd have to read the permit again, but it's coming up.
Did monitoring trigger that? Excuse me?
What triggered that was Merrimack.
The state mandated.
Oh, yeah, it's state mandated, EPA mandated, yeah. So we got our permit, and then they said we were gonna get a letter from the EPA, and after we got the letter, then it was gonna start X quarter after 6 months of receiving the letter. So we received the letter in September, so now we have to start.
Other questions?
I'll leave this up to you guys. Revenue generally across the board, we've kind of carried numbers year over year, stable, but recycling revenue we expect to be up this year. You guys want to take the floor?
I expect a lot of material to be going out this year, now that we are able to hold on to material for a lot longer with our new storage building. We can kind of play the market instead of such as like mixed paper right now is low on the market, along with cardboard, because the year for Christmas and all that, you get a lot of it, so the mills don't want it right away. Come summertime, we're actually able to send it out for a lot more, and same with a lot of the other materials on that list.
One of the big drivers is the aluminum, which has usually been every other year. We've been able to make enough load, and that's actually got some value to it. So we're anticipating that in the coming budget, having a full load. We've talked about it years past too. I'll just fill in a couple blanks for you, Darren. Before the storage building, we had those backhaul trailers out back. They would fill up and with numerous kinds of these commodities, but we couldn't make a full load. So you were always getting partial payment on recyclables. But now with the storage facility, we can actually sit on that, make a full backhaul trailer and get full value for it. Now, when I say full value, it's not particularly valuable, but it's still worth something more than a little partial load that the broker says, well, you didn't make a full load, so I'm only going to give you a pittance here. So we're expecting our revenue to go up, and we talk about stickers too, and I'm not meaning to throw anyone on the bus, but we're just going to do a better job with that. We did a great job getting our staff trained. This was not me trying to be critical of what we've been doing. We really needed to get back to smooth operation and worry about getting things in and out. These guys are on their feet now. They're doing a really good job, and I don't want to diminish that whatsoever. I think we've got a good system in place, so you're going to see that come up too. We just need to do it better. That's also me also letting you all know you're probably going to get a wrap on your window, and we need to sell you. We need to sell you a sticker. We have an obligation to do so, and it's not something that we've really hawked a lot over the last couple of years. But we're gonna sort of raise that up a little bit, so people should be expecting. We might get a little grief about that. We often do. These guys do. I get a few calls on that one too. People don't like paying that, but it also helps us to identify that you're a Peterborough resident. You're paying for the facility through taxation and other fees. Yeah.
Wow.
And it really helps us out a lot.
Put it in the dispatch.
The problem is people don't like to get called out. Because I'll do it if I'm down there, and people don't, they get irritated when you call them out because they don't have a sticker on their window.
Is it one sticker per household or one sticker per vehicle?
Per car.
Per car.
Are the 20, 25 stickers now available?
Yep, I have them. I got posters everywhere letting people know. And I just put a sign up actually by the facility sign this morning.
Sorry.
Well, good. Thanks, Darren. I'll go quickly through these. I know we've been doing this for a couple of hours now, so if you wouldn't mind. We have a very brief road update. Next up, Pine Street. Like I already said, we've been doing some survey work. We're working with a firm on that to try and get us biddable documents, which we expect to go out this spring. What that's going to do is exhaust the current capital fund. We're expecting that project to be about $1 million when it's all said and done, because it's water, sewer, roadway, sidewalk, curbing. It's a lot of different things. It's really, really in tough shape. You can see it by the condition of the asphalt. It's a good indicator of what's happening beneath the ground there. Everything needs to be replaced, so it's a valuable. And I mentioned that because it's important to consider that as we think about long-term funding for the road program, because we still have more work to do, which I'll get into in a minute. But we're going to exhaust that account. As you know, we've been saving a portion of what we've asked through warrant article each year, so that we'd be primed to do a big project like this, particularly Pine Street. We're going to do that project this year. We're going to be back to basically, I think, 70,000 in the account. I think it's what we forecasted when we do that project. So just wanted to keep that in the back of your mind.
The culvert's definitely still off the table.
We're still saving for the culvert, assuming no fundamental changes to the budget. That would prime us. I think I've got it in the capital schedule for FY '27 or '28, and that bridges, culverts, and dams expendable trust has been trying to accumulate money year over year to prime us for that and another $400,000 project on Old Dublin Road. So, assuming no changes to that capital request, we would be primed to do that work in a few years, which is the way we're gearing up to do this construction project. We're going to obviously overlay over that section where that pipe needs to be dealt with. But right now, that culvert's a very valuable project. It's very invasive and difficult construction project, actually, so it drives the cost up on it. So 3 years remain on a 10-year program. In the operating budget, there's been no requested change to our $450,000, which gives Tim, to a lesser degree myself, monies needed to do our light paving projects, maintenance projects, really keeping good roads in good shape. And the warrant article, as I talk about year over year, numerous times, is for the heavy stuff like Pine Street or other rural roads that were really in total disrepair and need to be completely dug up. So the intention presently is to go forward and ask for that money again this coming year, because we've got a fair amount of work outside of Grove, Main, Depot, School. We also have Summer, High Street, Elm Street, forgetting something in the downtown. Summer Street alone's $300,000 estimate at this point, $290 in that range. So bigger, longer roads that need a little bit more work, pretty expensive. And there's some rural roads too.
Yeah, we're still working on
that.
Outskirts.
So we've got work to do, but I mean, I think when we talked about it back in 2017 from where we are today, I see it. I think we all see it. it's been a heavy investment on the part of the community, but I think our roads, I was talking about awards for wastewater plants, but I think that we now honestly have the best roads in the region, in my opinion, if you drive around. I think we do a great job maintaining what's in good shape now, and I think we've done a really good job investing in getting our road network up to something that is a heck of a lot better than it was a few years ago. So
I think once downtown's done, you'll start seeing it. I think a lot of the complaints are just mostly, your Grove and your Elm.
Yeah, well, that's where the police budget will go up, because people will be speeding.
Yeah.
And the list is
There you go.
exhaustive. I've stopped putting up all the slides that show all the work that's been funded, but over 7 years, it's a tremendous amount of work that's gone into it, and I see it all the time. We get out around the community, and I'm sure you all do too, and a lot of the work was done the right way too, so that these things are holding up. You look at Hunt Road, we put a lot of money into that road. You remember how bad that was 7 years ago? It was in terrible shape. That road, I don't know, knock on wood again. I mean, I can't, it's just totally different because we put the money into it. I think it's really important. I already mentioned before, we're gonna reevaluate the long-term capital needs this coming year, try to figure out what that should be looking like going forward. I hope that yields a reduction in our request, but I do think it's important to continue saving so we don't end up 10 years from now back in the position of some guy coming in and saying, hey, you really need to put a road program in place. We should maintain what we've already invested in and not let it fall into disrepair. I think that is not the way to go. There's an $800,000 TIF request for downtown paving in FY26. That still has to run its way through the whole process, obviously. And I mentioned the estimate needs to be refined based on project scoping, and what I mean is what I said earlier. We need a better sense of what's happening underneath the asphalt to determine how much we're really looking at for an outlay there. If we feel we can get by paving everything, 2-inch overlay on everything, then it's considerably less money. If we feel the stormwater and the other utility systems can hold up over the course of that asphalt, and that would be a smart investment. If we feel like they're already at the point where they need to be dealt with, then I think we have to have a little bit more expensive conversation about what comes next there. But our rating, as far as I can tell, has increased nearly a full 12 points over this time period, and I think it's noticeable in the community. Next, please. Here's the stuff. Here's the roads that we have done this last year with the money, while still maintaining some savings so that we could be primed to do Pine Street this year. I won't read them off, but as you can see, it's like, I show these slides every year. It's just we would do these projects, but we would not have the funding to do those projects without that warrant article. There's $35,000 a combined line item for sidewalks and stormwater separation, reduced down a couple years ago from $50,000. So we spend 20 to 25 on sidewalks, and then we keep some money in the budget in the event that we deal with any problems where stormwater and sewer are interconnected, which has been quite some time, which is why we backed the budget down 2 years ago, I think, and we have yet to, but I think we may run into a little bit of that if we get into the downtown. Some of this infrastructure is very old, and I don't think any level of, I should say any level, but I know that there's some connections that could possibly be a problem in the downtown once we start getting into digging up a little bit down here. But a little bit more work to do before we can answer that question. And we're planning and estimating for Concord Street. Probably the single biggest complaint I get on sidewalks is Concord Street. It's in pretty tough shape once you get up past the library. We're working through that presently, but I wanted to make that known. Hopefully the budget can support it at this point. Hopefully we have a little bit of flexibility within the budget to do so. I think we can make a good stretch of it. Concord Street with a 20,000, I think I have the worksheet, but I'll leave it at that because we're getting a little long in the tooth here. So that's the intent. Plan, estimate, and do some work on Concord Street if the budget passes with the 25,000 in it for sidewalk work. The current budget's supporting Pine Street. Next slide. The capital, for those who are watching capital or participating in capital, you know that we reduced our capital requests considerably this year. We feel that was the responsible thing to do given where the tax rate's at this point, but we also feel that we've done a lot of updating to our fleet, so we could do that at this point and do it in confidence. So we reduced it down to 300,000 for FY26, down from 550, I think was the number. We pushed H5, which is a 6-wheeler replacement, to FY28. We always reevaluate this year over year. We look at the fleet. It's mostly Tim's work, looking at where things are at, what do we think we can get a stretch a couple more years out of. He did all that work this year and made a series of recommendations with the understanding that we probably need to reduce our request this year, which we did. We still have a couple items in the CIP for this year. The Ford F-350, one of our trucks, heavy, light, get a little tired. Medium duty truck, does a lot of buildings and grounds work, also does some plowing. Those are currently priced at $95 once we get them all loaded up. And this 40-year-old hot box that they use for asphalt, which we've had on the CIP schedule over the last like 10, 12 years. We keep kind of just, we can get another year out of that. This thing's got no life left in it, so we've left those in the CIP. And hopefully it's approved as is, because it would be nice to see that replaced.
Is that missing a zero or the comma in the wrong spot?
No, it's a $55.
Oh, yeah. Just kidding, we're not buying it this year.
Nice slide. Wait, which is it?
Good catch.
55 grand.
55,000.
5,000. Okay.
So just go back 1 second on that one, Seth, please. Because the H-27, $235,000 is still sitting in my CIP.
No, that's a already purchased truck reflected this year. The money's in the account, it will be shown, it's being shown as an expense this year.
Oh, okay.
Already ordered. We already talked about these. I won't belabor that. They're in the current budget. I didn't know I'd talk so much about them an hour ago, so in case people were paying attention to know what to expect, we're getting into Grove Street, we're getting into Elm Street. We already talked about it, so I won't get into it. Currently in the budget, there's still the request for $500,000 to your question about preparing for larger projects to the tune of $1.9 million for those two projects, currently estimated in a couple of years. So the idea is to continue trying to raise and save some money to get those projects done in the future. And those will be Pine Street and Old Dublin Road. Talked very early on when we started this about the Old Sharon Road water main. This is a TIF-funded project. I only bring it up to show that it's another one of the projects that's happening this year. It's offset with TIF funding. We have that funding. Will not be as disruptive as the Grove Street project when we get going on that. I'll leave a picture up there in case it was of interest, but also because, like I said, it's an FY26 project, but fully offset with the South Peterborough TIF funding. And this is the last slide, because I think we're all worn out at this point. We always put in water system distribution improvements. That's the bits and pieces and things we need in the event that things break in the field, like we had a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago at this point. And we got a waste grinder, which is a picture of this here, that takes care of the rags and stuff that shouldn't be in the sewer system before it gets to the treatment plant. And we
Non-flushable wipes, don't flush them.
Yeah. And then
Please.
we also moved, we removed another item from the CIP for to help level things out, particularly on the enterprise fund things. That is everything I had to present to you tonight.
You sure?
We can stay and talk about whatever we want.
Thank you, sir. It's always super interesting.
Thanks a lot.
We have a lot going
Jeff, there are
on.
a lot of projects, I don't remember hearing, maybe I missed it, anything about the environmental problem we had in Eco Square? Is that something that you're working on?
I'm not presently working on that. I think Danica might be a little bit more informed on that one. She's sort of working with the business owners on that.
I am, so I'm working with Willard directly in the Brownfields Committee with Southwest Regional Planning Commission on remediation of the property. They're working with DES actively right now to understand what the cause of contamination is and how it can be remediated off-site. As of right now, the Toadstool building does have remediation efforts installed, so air quality in there is totally fine. There's no hazards to public health or safety. We're working through it with more information coming from DES right now, though.
Is it something the town is going to have to put money into at some point?
I hope not.
Okay, I hope along with you.
I do too.
I think we've reached the end of our evening session, I think, unless anybody else has a chance. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second. I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Seth, thanks again for all your hard work. And
Thanks,
great
everybody.
presentation. Yeah, guys, everyone.
Guys in the back row.
Yes. The whole team.
Yeah.
Oh, fun.